ProWrestlingTees.com/616entertainment is the only place to grab an official t-shirt for the channel. There's a million of them. Check them out. This video is also brought to you in part by the Patreon producers, without whom content like this would not be possible. Last time out on the History of Halloween Part 3, we covered the Thorn Trilogy. That's Halloween 4, 5, and 6, which follows Jamie Lloyd, the daughter of the unfortunately deceased original heroine, Laurie Strode. Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers, brought the Shape back into the picture and did so with great success. Halloween 5, the revenge of Michael Myers, was a catastrophic failure on all fronts. Critically, financially, the whole lot of it was horrendous. And then there was Halloween, the curse of Michael Myers, which failed to answer 5's lingering questions in a satisfying manner and left fans of the franchise as well as the studio itself in a state of, well, what the hell are we supposed to do now? Halloween, the once iconic franchise, was in bad shape. As a matter of fact, the issues plaguing the series ran deeper than most are even aware. The future after Curse, or Halloween 6 as I like to call it, was originally planned to be a straight-to-video release. Straight-to-video is where once highly regarded horror franchises go to die. And yes, after the Thorn Trilogy, even Halloween was at death's door. The next step would play out in what was a truly fitting case of life imitating art, as Halloween itself, much like its main villain, Michael Myers, refused to be killed. What's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Thank you for tuning in for another installment of the History of Halloween. After establishing 20 years of lore across 6 installments, things in this universe were in a state of disarray, and that's putting it about as nicely as I possibly can. Is it just me, or does it keep getting creepier and creepier in here? With the clear demotion of a straight-to-video future looming on the horizon, the series was about to get a Frankensteinian lightning bolt charged directly into its heart, in the shape of its original star returning to the series that made her. I'm talking, of course, about Jamie Lee Curtis. Fundamental parts of the established story needed to be changed, rearranged, and even undone completely, but what other option did Miramax and Dimension Films have at this point? This was one more chance to try and get things right. So sit back, relax, and get ready for another wild ride in the land of Haddonfield's favorite slasher. This is the History of Halloween Part 4, Retcons and Resurrections. So that was a hell of a bombshell, right? Jamie Lee Curtis is back? The best part is that it wasn't Miramax or Moustapha Akkad begging and pleading with the star of the highest points in the franchise to make a triumphant return, no. Laurie Strode coming back to Halloween for the first time since 1981's Halloween 2 is solely and exclusively credited to Jamie Lee Curtis herself. And why would she do such a thing? Her career wasn't failing. Halloween wasn't her last grasp at relevance. She was killing the game. Jamie Lee Curtis has given dozens of interviews over the years regarding her return to Halloween, and her reason why was clear. It was important to her to give back to the fan base that made her career. It was important to her to say thank you to the people who rocketed her to stardom. Let's take a second to give her a hand for that, because that is awesome. Especially considering the fact that a script for what was originally titled Halloween 7, Two Faces of Evil, was already completed and had nothing to do with Laurie Strode at all, because, Laurie Strode died somewhere between Halloween 2 and Halloween 4, duh. So, obviously, Two Faces of Evil wasn't the film that was put into production. Jamie Lee Curtis was excited to get back into the shoes of the character that defined her career. But she wasn't signing on without a care in the world. There were indeed a list of, not demands, but things she was looking to accomplish. Number 1, she wanted John Carpenter and Deborah Hill back on the team, specifically with Carpenter in the director's chair. Can you imagine the original Trinity reunited? Well, I hope you can imagine it, because that's all you're gonna get. Carpenter allegedly agreed to direct Halloween 7 under one condition: that he be paid $10 million to do so. This wasn't just a flat director's fee, though. This included what he considered to be back pay and lost royalties dating all the way back to the 1978 original. a project in which he was paid a whopping $10,000 to direct. Miramax and the Weinsteins said absolutely not to his request, and Carpenter basically told him to go fuck themselves. This turn of events unfortunately caused Deborah Hill to drop off the project as well, and would sadly be the last time she was close to the franchise in any way, due to her untimely passing in 2005. We raised a glass to Donald Pleasance last time out, and you better do the same for Deborah Hill right now, Dan Dans. A true legend of the industry. Number 2 on Jamie Lee's list was, and this is big, she wanted Michael Myers killed off for good at the end of the film. And I mean for real. No twists about surviving an inferno, no turns where the dynamite and gunshots didn't get the job done. No questions about him slipping away into the night in someone else's clothing. If she was going to return as Laurie Strode, she wanted finality to the story. Otherwise, there was no point. There'd be no weight behind the decision. Michael Myers had to die. That is a huge request, right? This entire franchise hinges on its villain. And we already saw the studio try to work without him in Halloween 3, as we covered on part 2 of this series, so we know how that worked out. But here's the thing. They went for it. And by they, I mean the writer, the director, the studio, they were on board. Jamie Lee Curtis returning to Halloween made them comfortable in making this gigantic sacrifice, which is insane. Though there was one person in particular who found it just a little bit too insane, but he didn't speak up until the last second. Put a pin in that. We'll talk about that later. I mentioned the writer and director a second ago, and what better time to shed some light on the engine that made this film move than right now. First off, in the director's chair, we've got Steve Miner. If that name sounds familiar to you, it should, as he directed Friday the 13th Part 2, Friday the 13th Part 3, 1985's ridiculous and over-the-top House. The guy had roots in horror prior to this project, that's for certain. The writing is another story. It's a little convoluted, but we're going to get through this as clean as we can. Here's what's important, and maybe I should have stated this earlier. The metamorphosis of Halloween 7 becoming Halloween H2O 20 years later doesn't happen without a little film called Scream. In 1996, Scream blew the lid off the entire horror genre with its action-packed, super meta, crazy unpredictable approach to the common slasher. It was a smash hit, banking nearly $175 million at the box office, coming from just a $14 million budget. If you're keeping score, that $175 million box office is more than all 6 Halloween films grossed combined. Yeah, so how does this relate to Halloween? Well, Scream was distributed by Dimension Films, which was owned by Miramax, the same company that distributed Halloween. Seeing a new horror franchise break the bank wide open, Miramax and Dimension went, hold on, we're talking about Halloween 7 going straight to video? Forget that. Let's get Kevin Williamson, the guy who wrote Scream, to write Halloween 7. We can save this thing. We can right the ship and make stupid money here. Let's go. So that's what they did. Kevin Williamson came aboard right after Jamie Lee Curtis signed on, and he put together a treatment for Halloween 7, The Revenge of Laurie Strode. Fast forward time for the sake of brevity. Kevin Williamson was extremely busy with tons of other projects, so his script was handed off to Robert Zappia, and Zappia's script was eventually cleaned up and retouched by Matt Greenberg. The title of the film changed many times throughout the writing process, from the aforementioned Halloween 7, The Revenge of Laurie Strode, to Halloween Blood Ties, and eventually the final title was set in place. Halloween H2O 20 years later. The title of this film has been made fun of from literally the day it was announced. I understand the 20 years later part. What I don't understand is the redundancy in how it's communicated. Halloween. Gotcha. Good. H2O. So not the molecular structure of water. No. H2O breaks down into Halloween 20. So that means this part of the title already is Halloween 20. And then, because we're not done, there's 20 years later, the tagline. So the full title, Halloween H2O 20 years later, breaks down into Halloween 20 years later. It's horrible. It's terrible. I've wondered for years who came up with this dog shit title, but I learned in my research it was actually Jamie Lee Curtis. And this movie wouldn't have happened without her, so I'll give it a pass for that, but come on, man. It's terrible. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna bury it any harder out of respect for the Queen, but we gotta be real. Before we go any further into the behind-the-scenes material, though, why don't we talk about the story that this film tells? Here's an extremely important distinction I'm gonna throw out right up front. Halloween H2O completely rewrites the franchise. Halloween 3 is a given. It's not related to anything and was a failed experiment. But I'm serious. Halloween 4, 5, and 6 never happened. You know all that time we put into following Jamie Lloyd? She never existed. Michael Myers sitting in a coma in a hospital for 10 years following Halloween 2? Never happened. H2O retcons the entire Thorn Trilogy. Michael crying in Halloween 5, the Man in Black, the cult from Halloween 6, Laurie Strode's off-screen death mentioned in Halloween 4. None of it ever happened. Now you know why they strayed from calling this one Halloween 7, right? You can't have 7 without 3, 4, 5, and 6, for Christ's sake. Halloween and Halloween 2 are now the only canon entries in the franchise from here on out. So with that in mind, with all those films erased, the last bits of story we have are this. Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis burned at the end of Halloween 2, and Laurie Strode was taken away in an ambulance. That's it. Now, here in 1998, 20 years have passed, and Michael Myers is back. He breaks into the home of Nurse Chambers, who's reprising her role from the first 2 films, where he steals the file on the one that got away, his long-lost sister, Laurie Strode. He also kills 2 neighborhood boys and slits Nurse Chambers' throat on the way out. What a comeback. The Shape steals a car and is gonzo before the cops even find the bodies. The detectives mentioned that Nurse Chambers had taken care of Dr. Loomis for years after his unfortunate accident in 1978. I don't understand why they'd still go with the "he survived the explosion" route, seeing as though they mention here that Loomis had died a few years earlier. Donald Pleasance died in real life in 1995. There was no possible way he could have reprised his role, and with the retcon in place, why not just go with him tragically passing in the explosion? He sacrificed himself for Laurie all those years ago. Is that not more sad and more heroic at the same time? I don't know, whatever. We see the newspaper clippings that adorn the departed doctor's entire office, one of which states that Laurie Strode died in a car accident. Well, that sucks, right? Nope, because she didn't really die. Laurie faked her death and went into some sort of witness protection deal and is now known as Carrie Tate, the head mistress of a private school in Summer Glen, California, with her son, John. John and Laurie, Carrie Tate, I can't go blowing her cover here, they don't get along very well. John knows about his mother's past, and because of what she's gone through, she's an extremely overprotective hover parent. And it's hard to blame her, right? But at the same time, imagine being John, having lived your entire life without a single inkling of anything that troubles your mother, still being the dictating force in your every waking moment. It'd be exhausting, and it would feel truly unfair. Carrie, I got the name right that time, isn't coping so well herself. Daily visions of her brother, night terrors that cause her to thrash and scream in her sleep, a cocktail of pills in the medicine cabinet, and a cocktail in a glass every couple minutes. She's an alcoholic, self-medicating, paranoid, delusional wreck, but with a good heart. It says a lot about Laurie/Carrie that even with her past trauma and current day addictions, she hasn't become a bad person, when more often than not, these sort of characters go off the deep end and wind up becoming villains themselves, whether they mean to or not. Her inability to move on can be directly compared to Rachel in Halloween 5, who, despite going through something extremely similar, is totally fine just a year later. This is what good writing and filmmaking looks like compared to bad writing and filmmaking, folks. Carrie and John have a big blow up, and after speaking to her boyfriend about it, she decides that she's carried this weight for 20 years. It might be time to let go of her trauma's stranglehold on her son's life. She even goes as far as revealing her secret past to her boyfriend, who when he realizes that the story he's heard for years is now standing right in front of him, he has no idea what to think. This is all well and good, but hey, remember that whole "it's been 20 years, you need to let it go" thing? Well, he's here. Michael Myers has returned to finish the job. He slaughters John's friends in gruesome fashion. He even hits John with the old stab you in the thigh gimmick before coming face to face with his sister. A reunion 20 years in the making. But just as soon as he shows up, he's gone. This might be a good time to regroup. Whoops! Michael knifes Laurie's boyfriend in the back and hangs him there, straight out of Halloween 2. The game is officially on now, and just like she did 20 years ago, Laurie has answers for Michael's attacks. She's not one of these jabronis going down in one fell swoop. She gets her son and his girlfriend out of harm's way just in the nick of time, and then she tells them to go on without her. She'll catch up. Laurie Strode is tired of running. She's done being afraid. This shit is coming to an end, and it's coming to an end right now. Seeing someone not run away, but arm themselves and audibly challenge the shape, this is fucking crazy. Laurie storms back into the school, axe in hand, as Michael descends upon her like a venomous spider. This chase is heart-racing stuff, and when you boil it down here, Laurie beats the shit out of Michael in this battle. He reopens that 1978 wound on her arm, but so what? Laurie impales him with a flagpole. She knees him right in the unmentionables, which he no-sells. That's how you know he's truly inhuman. She stabs him 9 goddamn times before he goes ass over tea kettle off a balcony through a table. This might sound like I'm reading the description of an old ECW title match, but I'm not. This showdown is just that hardcore. After all this, the ambulances arrive, they're loading the bodies of the victims, and Laurie knows it wasn't enough. She's seen evil before. She's come face to face with it. She's well aware that Michael is still alive in that body bag, so she hijacks the van at gunpoint. Right on cue, the shape springs to life and Laurie jacks the brakes, sending her brother crashing through the windshield. She taunts him to stand up and nails him at full speed before sending the van down the hillside, where she's tossed from the vehicle and Michael is crushed between a tree and the falling automobile with a sickening crunch. Even still, Laurie Strode knows that her brother's evil heart still beats. His vile lungs still draw breath. As she approaches, Michael reaches out to her. For the first time ever, these siblings extend a hand in the other's direction. But she knows. Laurie knows that whatever this thing is in front of her, it isn't extending a hand in love, or regret, or sorrow, or remorse. She's seen it before. This is a wounded and desperate predator. So she cuts his fucking head off with an axe as the original theme music carries us into the darkness. Holy shit. This was it. This was the end. No swerves, no secrets, no sneaking away off to the side. Laurie Strode killed Michael Myers. She cut his fucking head off. She saw to it herself that her brother's evil existence came to an end by her hand. This is without a doubt the most definitive and most shocking ending in Halloween history up to this point. And what a way to redeem itself, right? These characters, this story, especially considering the mess that we just came from, this was fantastic. A truly, truly satisfying ending to a legendary horror storyline. Before we get into the critical reception in the box office and all that good stuff, I want to talk about some of the little things. I adore the fact that the last thing we hear in Halloween 2 is the immortal Mr. Sandman song, as Laurie is being driven away in the ambulance. Mr. Sandman. Halloween H2O opens with the neighborhood kids carving pumpkins, fallen leaves on the ground, and Mr. Sandman playing in the background. I mentioned Scream earlier and how that film's success breathed life back into the flatlining Halloween. Well, check this out. What movie is playing on the TV in Scream? Halloween. And what movie are the girls watching in Halloween H2O? Scream 2. A little tip of the hat, right? Halloween H2O is a love letter to horror in general. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Jimmy, shows up in a hockey mask. Remember, director Steve Miner was behind Friday the 13th parts 2 and 3, so there's no question where that came from. See that decoration on the porch? That's the Butterball Cenobite from Hellraiser. We even get Jamie Lee Curtis's real-life mom, Janet Leigh of Psycho fame, playing a character named Norma, for God's sake. Janet's appearance in the film was at the request of Jamie Lee Curtis herself, who not only wanted to share the screen with her mother, but wanted to let her mom close out her big screen career in style. Also, yeah, Norma's car is literally the car from Psycho. I'm telling you, this is a tribute to horror that spared no expense. The fate speech that Laurie sits through in class back in Halloween 1. She's giving the speech here in H2O, and it's John's girlfriend Molly who notices the shape out through the window. In an interesting little tidbit, the narration at the beginning, the original Blackest Eyes promo from Halloween 1 that we hear over the credits, the crew had zero access to the original recording. The only audio they had was from the movie itself, which was already mixed with music and ambient noise underneath it. So that Dr. Loomis voice you hear?
The blackest eyes. The devil's eyes.
That's not Donald Pleasance. That's Tom Kane, who you probably know very well. He was Professor Utonium in the Powerpuff Girls. He was Yoda all the way through the Clone Wars. He was Commissioner Gordon in Batman Arkham Asylum, Magneto in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, the announcer from the Eric Andre show. Trust me, you've heard him before. It's also worth mentioning that Jamie Lee Curtis lobbied hard for a cameo from actor Mike Myers. She wanted a scene where he walked past her on the street and she did a double take. This doesn't make any sense at all. It's just a stupid joke that would feel totally out of place here, but it doesn't matter because Mike Myers flat out refused and apparently was not interested in the slightest. Good. Oh, and Danielle Harris, our Jamie Lloyd actress, tried to get herself a cameo here in H2O, which apparently the studio shut down hard. Also good. Look, I have no problem with Danielle Harris. She's great. But when you start filling a serious movie with in-jokes, it just becomes distracting. Now, for as positive as I've been up to this point, I do not want to paint the picture that Halloween H2O is flawless, because that's just not true. There are a number of things that bother me with this film, and who the hell would I be to not share them with you? It bothers me that with this retcon, the team had the chance to solve some lingering problems that they completely ignored. This is a sequel to Halloween 2, right? Where the last thing we saw was Michael burning alive? Tell me why, given another chance to make it right, they've once again completely ignored the fact that Michael should be scarred and burnt beyond belief. Even the Thorn Trilogy did a better job in this department by at least showing the burns on his hands. How about Michael's eyes that Laurie shot out with the .357 Magnum in Halloween 2? The eye holes on the Shape's mask are now larger than they've ever been. And the film makes zero attempt to hide his eyes with creative lighting, so we can clearly see them every single time he's on screen. No scars, no scratches, nothing. It's well known that the orchestral score for Halloween H2O by John Ottman created gigantic issues for the studio, as it did not fit at all. But what about some of these sound effects? Is this a Looney Tunes episode or something? I also really can't stand Michael's mannerisms in this movie. He's always hunched forward, and when he's not stalking someone, he walks like somebody who has never seen a camera before and doesn't know what to do when the red light is on. It's a horrendous portrayal, I'm sorry. Inside the costume this time around was stuntman Chris Durand, who, in his words, wanted to play Michael as if he were a big cat, hunting his prey. Okay, dude. Well, it sucks. Sorry. And finally, when it comes to issues with this movie, we have to talk about the infamous mask debacle. If you've ever seen Halloween H2O before, you may have an idea of what I'm talking about, even if you're not a crazy person who has seen it 100 times like I have. There are 4 completely different masks used in this one film, and sometimes the mask switches back and forth in the exact same scene. Here's the deal. Production began with a mask created by KNB EFX. It was stark white with next to zero detail. This thing had a straight up baby face, smoother than marble countertops. To put it bluntly, in my opinion, it looked like pure shit. It looks like an $11 knockoff. The issue, though, is that the Weinsteins and Miramax didn't say anything about it until 3 weeks into production. The bulk of Michael's scenes were already in the can when the studio called and said, "Absolutely not, that thing is hideous, you need to reshoot it all." The Weinsteins wanted director Steve Miner to use a version of the Halloween 6 mask that had been refined by John Carl Buechler. Miner hated this mask and flat out refused, which nearly resulted in his firing from the film. You'll notice the Halloween 6 mask in the opening scene and nowhere else, because that was the one day Steve Miner was like, you know what, fuck it, put the fucking thing on and let's get this done. The final design, which appears in the vast majority of the film, was created by the legendary Stan Winston. And I mentioned before that I don't like this thing. Sorry, Stan. No disrespect, it's just not my taste. The eye holes are too big and the hair's fucked up. I'm doing a whole video ranking the Michael Myers masks. Keep an eye out for that. Check it out though, frame by frame, in the same scenes, the mask switches back and forth between the Winston and the KNB, because the studio only ordered reshoots of the close-ups. Did they really think no one would notice? It sticks out like nobody's business. These things don't look anything alike. And oddly enough, this isn't the first time KNB EFX wound up in this position. In another very strange connection to Scream, there was an issue with the mask that KNB produced for that picture. If you watch very closely, you'll see this thing switching back and forth between the KNB and the Fun World designs. What a weird way to be linked. If you thought the mask issue was finished there, though, oh no, I saved the worst for last. There's one close-up that the studio apparently forgot to order a reshoot on, and instead of cutting it out or going in last second and fixing it, they assured the director, the editor, the whole crew, that they could have it fixed with CGI. And this ungodly abomination is what they came up with. What the fucking hell is that? How in God's name do you not cut this out? It's awful. It would have been less jarring if they left the fucking KNB piece of shit here instead of this garbage. Good lord, man. There's one specific line in Halloween H2O that always makes me laugh, and it's the most innocuous, stupidest, most throwaway line of the whole movie, but sometimes it's the little things that stick with you. There's a part where Josh Hartnett and his teenage friends are preparing their little secret dinner date, and they need the corkscrew to get the wine bottle open. I don't know if Josh Hartnett pissed somebody off, or if the person doing an impression of him for the ADR just didn't do a very good job, but it's clearly not Josh Hartnett, and the person doing this impression sounds like they're making fun of him so bad.
Where's the booze?
We need a corkscrew, man.
Who the hell is that?
We need a corkscrew, man. We need a corkscrew, man.
To this day, if my girlfriend and I are sitting down to dinner and one of us needs something out of the kitchen, whatever the hell it is, maybe it's a fork or a knife or a spoon, one of us will always say, every time, "We need the corkscrew, man."
We need a corkscrew, man.
In that stupid voice. I know it's a ridiculous story, I don't know why we do it, but like I said, sometimes it's the little things from these movies that stick with you, and "we need the corkscrew, man"
We need a corkscrew, man.
definitely stuck with me. So with all this in mind, with the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, with the erasure of the incoherent Thorn Trilogy, a practically fresh start for the franchise, how did Halloween H2O perform at the box office? All of the pieces were in place to shock some life back into this decrepit corpse, right? If this doesn't work, nothing will. Well, guess what? H2O was a gargantuan success, raking in over $75 million at the box office, breaking the series record set all the way back in 1978. Critical reviews were middling at best, but fans of the franchise had spoken. Halloween H2O was the step in the right direction they'd been clamoring for the last 17 years. Sure, Halloween 4 was good, but who is Michael Myers without Laurie Strode? No offense to Jamie Lloyd, but would you rather watch Stone Cold vs. Bret Hart or Stone Cold vs. Bruce Hart? With her return and smashing success, Jamie Lee Curtis proved that Michael Myers isn't the draw. Laurie Strode is the draw. You may scoff at that, but look at the numbers and try and tell me otherwise. We all love the shape, but the facts are the facts, and this is undeniable. Before we move on, I want to share another personal aspect of this film with you guys. This new timeline, Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, this trilogy, this is my timeline. Michael Myers breaks out of Smith's Grove Sanitarium in 1978 and goes on a rampage, Halloween and Halloween 2. And 20 years later, he returns with a vengeance, only to have the cold and cruel blade turned on him in the end, Halloween H2O. When I think of the Halloween films and the lore of Michael Myers, for me, this is it. This is the whole shebang. Halloween 1 through 6 with the Thorn Trilogy, that's something else entirely. Halloween 3 in its own little universe, that's also something else entirely. Look, I'm going to do an entire video explaining all the different Halloween timelines because there's a shitload of them, believe it or not. So keep an eye out for that, but yeah, this is it for me. I'm calling it the 20 Years Trilogy. That sounds good. Why not? In my mind, that was indeed Michael Myers being decapitated at the end of H2O. Wait, what? 2002's Halloween Resurrection is what happens when you just can't leave well enough alone. You heard me right. That wasn't Michael Myers getting his head cut off at the end of H2O. Are you ready for this load of shit? It was an EMS worker who had arrived early and was checking on Michael after his fall off the balcony. The shape sprang to life, crushed his voice box so he couldn't speak, choked him out, switched clothes with him, and disappeared into the night undetected. What a load of bull fucking shit. Jamie Lee Curtis signed on for H2O with the sole purpose of closing the story and moving on. So how did this happen? Well, good old Moustapha Akkad technically owns the Michael Myers character, and it wasn't until the last second that he threatened to cancel the film if there wasn't a backdoor excuse built into H2O's ending. Jamie Lee Curtis, director Steve Miner, everybody else involved with this project all agreed that at the end of their movie, that's Michael Myers getting his head cut off. That's the end of the story. Whatever else they're gonna do next, who gives a fuck? This may be a controversial opinion, and that's fine, but here it is. For me, the worst thing that ever happened to Halloween up to this point was Moustapha Akkad regaining full control back in 1988. That was the day that an artist's creative integrity died, and Akkad's desire to milk this franchise to death took full control. And it's a goddamn shame. So with all that said, with Jamie Lee Curtis adamant that H2O be the official conclusion, how the hell did they get her back for Halloween Resurrection? I'll tell you how. Number one, it cost a lot of money to get her on board. Number two, she signed a contract for a 30-second cameo in which she demanded that Laurie Strode be killed so that she could walk away from this shit forever. I'm serious. 30 seconds. To Jamie Lee Curtis, the story was already over, so this didn't even count. As the years have passed, she's gone as far as calling Halloween Resurrection a joke and a piece of shit.
Well, Halloween Resurrection was a joke.
Look at her character here, for God's sake. Laurie Strode looks how Jamie Lee Curtis feels. And yeah, Laurie Strode is indeed killed off in the first 15 minutes of Resurrection. It took a little longer than 30 seconds, which cost the studio a lot more money. You want to know the best part? Rumor has it that Jamie Lee Curtis donated her salary on this film to charity. So holding up the studio for more money went straight from the pockets of the mega rich to the very needy. Hell yeah, Mrs. Curtis. Halloween Resurrection sucks. It completely sucks. I'll give it this though. It's not the same kind of suck that Halloween 5 is. I would rather paper cut my gooch than ever watch Halloween 5 again. Whereas Resurrection falls into the so bad it's good category. It's a guilty pleasure. A guilty, shitty, terrible, how did this even get made type of pleasure, but it's a guilty pleasure, regardless. Let's get into the story this film tells, and then we'll talk about how it was made. What do you think? Two nurses at the psychiatric hospital where Laurie Strode is locked up fill in the audience on how this film is even possible. The whole, she killed the wrong person horse shit. You know what's funny, too? Is the Michael sneaking into the woods in the EMS outfit? That's the only footage from the H2O set. The unmasking of the severed head was shot on Resurrection's lot, which is clear as day, seeing as though it's a new mask. Anyway, Laurie's been waiting for Michael to show up for 4 years. He does, and she traps him. God damn, she has his number, doesn't she? Well, it turns out she's a fucking idiot, because she still doesn't believe it's Michael, despite him chasing her for 5 minutes with a knife while exuding all of the Michael Myers energy in the world. He snatches her up, stabs her in the back, and this is where Halloween Resurrection gets its first moment of feeling like straight up amateur fan fiction. Laurie Strode kisses her brother right on the lips and departs our mortal coil with the tagline,
I'll see you in hell.
The end. I mean, you'd think it would end there, right? What the hell does Michael do now? He just gained the finality to his story that they wouldn't give Laurie. He got her. Mission accomplished. It's over. Only, it's not. Michael gives his knife to a patient who idolizes and obsesses over serial killers before departing the hospital. So the embodiment of evil, the child with the devil's eyes, realizes he's a celebrity? The shape is a mark for himself? Who knows? They never even come back to this guy. But the story does continue. How? Well, Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks, or Freddie and Nora as their characters are named, are starting a reality show called Dangertainment, where they're going to get college kids to spend the night poking around the Myers house while wearing webcams on their heads. And if they make it through the night, their tuition will be covered. Or some bullshit like that. So there you go. The rest of Michael Myers' existence is literally him being grumpy that there are people poking around his house, and I'm not making that up. These characters couldn't be any more one note. They couldn't be any more cookie cutter. Take Rudy, for example. He's training to be a chef. All he fucking talks about is food. That's it. That's his whole character. I like Rudy. I think he's funny. I root for Rudy. But that's all he gets. He's the chef. Jen doesn't get anything. She's just Sarah's annoying friend. Sarah is our main girl, our protagonist, if you can call her that. She's really just one of the people. Nothing sets her apart from anyone else. She's got an online friendship with a guy named Deckard, not Decker, Deckard, who, unbeknownst to Sarah, is just a freshman lying about his name and age. Great. Deckard does have a Resident Evil 2 poster in his room, though, so at least there's that. It's really out of focus, but I've seen this movie 100 times for some reason, and I know my Resident Evil. Watch the history of Resident Evil, A Decade of Decay, right after this video ends. Link in description. So all of these idiots go into the Myers house for the Dangertainment show, and Deckard is watching live from a party he's at with his friend. There's creepy shit all over the house. Chain harnesses, a high chair with gnarly straps on it, spooky drawings. It's all a little strange. It feels off. It's soon revealed that Freddie and Nora, the creators of Dangertainment, staged it all. These are props. They wanted to give the audience something to be scared about, so they filled this long-abandoned house with fake limbs and planted drawings. This is discovered when two of the characters sneak off into a hidden basement to have sex, and a wall gives way. They initially freak out until they realize it was gimmicked to begin with. Only one of them spots another hidden passage, and this one is real. Michael Myers has been living underneath his old house in the sewer for 25 years. He's been eating shit rats and he sleeps with a Raggedy Ann doll in which he has shoved nails into the eye sockets. Have we not learned by now that clarifying details about Michael's backstory cannot be done without it completely ruining the mystique? Look, I don't need to know where he lives. I don't need to know what he eats. I certainly don't need to know that he sleeps on a shitty cot with a little fucking doll, and he's so emo that he shoved nails into the doll's eye sockets. I don't need this. But yeah, being that this is Michael's room, he's mad that this girl came barging in, so he impales her on a bent fence post. The rest of the film surrounds Michael stalking and doing away with all these one-note morons in pretty entertaining fashion. I'll give it that. And I'd be an asshole to not put over the scene where Freddy, dressed as Michael Myers in an attempt to scare the people on his show, runs into the real Michael Myers. The problem is, Freddy thinks this is one of his crew stealing his gimmick. So rather than being scared, he cuts a promo on Michael.
You gonna ruin the whole effect. Ah, damn it. Your shit ain't working up there or something?
This is dumb as fuck. It's one of those how has this series come to this moments, but it is funny. See, this is the so bad it's good thing I was talking about. Let's throw a few more things at you in the so bad it's good department. At one point, Rudy gets knifed into the door. We see the blade of the butcher knife enter his chest and exit the other side of the door. Do you know how long this fucking knife would have to be for it to go into his chest and pass out the back of the door? This isn't a goddamn broadsword, so how is this possible? Sometimes there's static on the webcam feeds, and when it glitches out, we see flashes of Michael Myers' face. This doesn't make any sense at all. I don't even think I have to explain why it doesn't make any sense. Almost every time the shape is on screen, we get a close-up of his face, and we can hear a rattlesnake. What the hell is that? Why a rattlesnake? Rewind to the beginning. Laurie catches Michael in that trap on the roof. How the fuck did she make this trap? It's got a remote-controlled, motorized pulley mechanism. You're telling me she built this thing up here? Is she MacGyver? Shit, is that too dated? Does anyone even know who MacGyver is anymore? Okay, back to where we were, but still continuing with the so bad it's good, because that's practically the entire film. It comes down to only Freddy and Sarah left alive. Michael is stalking them, but they're able to evade. How? Oh, well, through Sarah's Palm Pilot, of course. Deckard, who is watching live, is telling her where Michael is, as he's got all the feeds pulled up on the screen. Why doesn't Sarah just call the goddamn police? She's got a phone in her hands! Who knows? Anyway, the final confrontation sees Sarah fighting Michael with a shitty chainsaw, and Freddy literally beating the absolute shit out of Michael with the use of his kung fu. Yup. Freddy screams and howls like Bruce Lee and delivers jumping, spinning hook kicks, and Michael just stands there and takes it. I swear to Christ, Michael lets Freddy hit him like 10 times in this movie. He eventually tosses Freddy across the room. It looks bad for our surviving duo, and hold on, Freddy shocks Michael in the dick and balls with a live wire, and Michael Myers screams in pain. Yes, that is the first time we have ever heard Michael Myers' voice, and it's because he got shocked in the dick and balls with a live wire. I hate this movie. Sarah and Freddy escape the blaze.
Hey, Mikey, happy fucking Halloween!
And Michael's corpse is hauled away to the morgue, where it's revealed in the most shithole, useless, uninspired, thoughtless, wasteful, stupid nothing ending that he is still alive. He really wasn't, though, in a way, because this second timeline, the one that retconned out 4, 5, and 6, meets its end right here on the back of Resurrection. How did it come to this? How is the sequel to the first great Halloween film in what must have been 10 years fucked up so badly, so quickly? We've already covered Moustapha Akkad's tampering with the franchise that ruined the finality of H2O. No need to retread that ground. But honestly, we had Rick Rosenthal back as the director here. This is the guy that directed Halloween 2! On that alone, it sounds like Resurrection could have been pretty cool, right? But it's not. It sucks. It doesn't even feel like a Halloween film, for one, and I'll give you one guess as to why that is. If your answer was because it wasn't a Halloween film, they added Michael Myers and the Halloween license to an already existing idea, well, you win again. I'm serious. Halloween Resurrection's script was written by Larry Brand, who has confirmed that he'd been wanting to write something inspired by the 1898 H.G. Wells classic War of the Worlds, which was infamously broadcast over the radio waves by Orson Welles in 1938, causing mass hysteria from listeners who believed the alien invasion story to be real. Brand looked at War of the Worlds as a fake story that listeners thought was real, and had an idea for a story where the real events were perceived by an audience to be fake, which occurs here, as the viewers of the Dangertainment webcast comment on the Shape's actual murders as having great special effects. Brand had kicked this thing around, and when he was put in front of Moustapha Akkad, he tossed out the idea and just dropped Michael Myers into the middle of the whole thing, which Akkad obviously loved. Brand's script was fucked with a ton, by both Akkad and Dimension Films, as you might imagine. He wanted the movie to be titled MichaelMyers.com, which is, I think it's horrendous. But on the flip side, his original ending is way better than the trash we were given. After the fire fades, EMTs and cops and firemen are at the scene, and Michael's charred body eerily sits up, just like the old days. Only instead of getting up and walking away, he would crumble to ash, fading into nothing but a memory. Obviously, this wasn't filmed. Why? Because it's an inarguable death. You can't come back from that. So there's no way in hell Akkad was going to let that get through. How would he continue to sequelize the franchise if his cash cow were killed? And listen, Larry Brand knew Resurrection wasn't good. In an interview with Taking Shape from Script to Scream, which is a fantastic book about the Halloween series that I've been using for a ton of my research, Brand said, "Look, this may sound weird coming from the guy who wrote Halloween Resurrection, but I do have standards when I write." That is hilarious. And seriously, Taking Shape is great, and there's an Amazon link in the description of this video if you're interested in supporting the authors through buying their book. They've done an excellent job with it, and even as a lifelong fan, I've learned a ton through reading it. Highly recommended. But back to business, yeah. Rick Rosenthal, Halloween 2's director, became the first person to ever return to the franchise. And Halloween 2 is great, in my book, but this one sucks. And it's not just the story that clearly had Michael Myers added last second. It's not just the hollow and lifeless characters, but the film itself. How in the name of my ass did they reuse the exact same scream 6 times inside of 20 minutes?
Internet Emmy.
Did they think no one would notice this? How is it that we see this guy reacting to the footage on screen, only for him to then enter the room for the first time and ask what everyone is watching just minutes later? With as large a team as a big film like this has, how does a glaring mistake like this make it into the final cut without being rearranged? Several different cameras were used to shoot Resurrection, and they're swapped in and out interchangeably, despite producing completely different looking visual aesthetics. One of the main sticking points fans have with Halloween Resurrection is Busta Rhymes' character Freddy. The general consensus seems to be, and I agree with this by the way, that the Freddy character is awesome. He's hilarious. He's full of his own shit, he's entertaining as hell, but he doesn't really seem to fit in with the Halloween franchise. And he certainly shouldn't be hitting Michael Myers with jumping, spinning kicks that would make Edson Barboza blush. It boils down to this, and some of you are probably mad at me that I didn't talk about LL Cool J and Halloween H2O, but it was by design. I knew I was going to talk about him here, and I didn't want to be redundant. Halloween H2O was blessed with a side character named Ronnie, an erotic fiction writer who works as a security guard in order to pay his bills. He's played by the one and only LL Cool J, who absolutely nails it. He's funny, you want him to survive, and luckily, he does. He even learns from his trauma, vowing to make his next book an erotic thriller. Ronnie is great. Well, the studio wanted Ronnie to come back for Halloween Resurrection, but they decided they couldn't afford LL Cool J, who had continued to work in both music and film, crushing it on both fronts. So with LL Cool J out of the picture, we've still got a studio wanting to appeal to the African American audience, so they've inserted Busta Rhymes. And those are their words, by the way, not mine. Writer Larry Brand told Taking Shape co-author Dustin McNeil that there's a very real thing in horror films where the audience likes to see characters who look like themselves getting killed. He stated, "That's why it's always young people getting killed in slasher movies, because young people go see slasher movies. If we set it in an old folks' home, no one would go see it. So I understand why they would want an ethnically diverse cast." The Freddy role wasn't originally written the way Busta Rhymes played it. Busta Rhymes was given free rein to completely change his dialogue, from ad-libbing lines on the spot to completely changing the original wording of what was on the page. And you know what? Audiences fucking loved it. I mentioned earlier that I think Freddy is hilarious, and I'm not alone. In the original cut of the film, Freddy dies. He doesn't make it out alive. In test screening surveys, the crowds made it clear. They liked Freddy, and they wanted more of him, and the studio listened. Much of what we see from Busta Rhymes was added in after the film was finished, and obviously they rewrote the ending, which sees Freddy heroically carrying our original main character over his shoulder to safety, busting out one-liners as he does so.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
And that's where my problem lies. If Busta Rhymes was doing Bruce Lee moves and cracking jokes on another horror villain, it would work way better. The problem isn't Busta Rhymes. The problem is that they have him doing this over-the-top shit in a franchise that, across its 24 years of existence, has never done anything remotely close to this. Jason went toe-to-toe with that boxer on a rooftop in Jason Takes Manhattan, right? Freddy Krueger has been fighting wizards and hot punk rock chicks and doing comic book battles for over a decade. But Michael Myers doesn't find himself playing these sort of silly games, and these one-liners and comedic situations just feel horribly out of place. In part 3 of the history of Halloween, I shared with you that my podcast co-host, the artist formerly known as Mike Charles, considers Michael Myers shedding tears in Halloween 5 to be the worst bit of character assassination he's ever witnessed. For me, though, I can't forgive this. No one should be standing in front of Michael Myers, hitting him with jump kicks, using kung fu to blast him out a window, and actually winning the fight, only to continually assault the shape verbally as he glides away. That's a sin that should be punishable by law. I don't care if it's Busta Rhymes or Anderson Silva. Nobody should be getting the better of Michael Myers in a fist fight. It's stupid. Laurie gets the better of him in H2O because, number one, she's armed to the fucking teeth. And number two, every time she gets one over on him, it's an ambush. It's a sucker shot, a sneak attack. Busta Rhymes charges up his special move and then lands it without an issue. I can't fucking talk about this anymore. Like I said though, Halloween Resurrection is so bad that it falls into the guilty pleasure slot. I'll always have a soft spot for Freddy and his bullshit, and here's why. It's because Halloween Resurrection was the first film of the franchise that I ever saw in theaters. I was 11 years old and I went to the AMC in Crestwood, Illinois with my buddy Bathroom Money Tim Yours. Now if you're asking yourself, how did an 11 and 12-year-old kid get in to see Halloween Resurrection? It's rated R. Well, Tim's mom brought us. So the decapitations, the boobs, all the blood, the swearing, it was fine. We had parental guidance. What a fucking joke. When it comes down to it, this 8th installment in the franchise was half-baked. No, it wasn't half-baked. This was maybe quarter-baked at best. A story unrelated to Michael Myers, shoehorning the villain in at the last second to cash in at the box office. Worthless characters we'll never see or hear from again. Seriously, Sarah and Deckard don't even have a resolution at the end. It's literally just a text that says, "You're alive." Fucking whoopee. And yet another ending that resolves and finishes absolutely nothing. Right when the college kids get to the house, one of them immediately opts out of putting in any effort to uncovering the secrets of Michael Myers.
You don't have to do anything.
Aren't we supposed to be looking for answers?
All right. The devil made him do it. I'm done.
If this isn't a commentary on how the studio, Moustapha Akkad, Rick Rosenthal, Larry Brand, and everyone else involved in this piece of shit felt about the state of the franchise, I don't know what is. Halloween Resurrection drew less than half of H2O's box office gross, pulling in just $37 million against a $15 million budget. Critics burn this thing alive across the board, and I've never met anyone in my life who enjoys this film for any other reason than, yeah, it sucks. I love it though. After taking a colossal step forward with 1998's Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection goes and completely ruins everything all over again. This time, beyond repair. Not only did they kill off their star in Laurie Strode, but they failed to make even one new star across this entire 8th installment, leaving Halloween completely dead in the water. I mentioned that the second timeline ends here, and oh boy did it end on a flat note. What was to come was not another retcon or a shakeup, no. Halloween was truly fucked, flatlined, and once again in danger of slipping into the direct-to-video market, all until a new writer and director was hired to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. It was time for Halloween to be rebooted, but that's a story for next time. Thank you so much for watching this, the history of Halloween Part 4, Retcons and Resurrections. These two films are the epitome of one step forward and two steps back, are they not? Next time up, we're gonna wrap things up real nice with the history of Halloween Part 5, from reboot to reborn, premiering October 14th, 2021. Yes, indeed, that is one day prior to the release of the brand new film, Halloween Kills. I'm going to have you at the edge of your seat, ready to take in the next chapter in Halloween. God damn, it's almost like I planned it this way all along. If you love this video and want to support the channel, feel free to head over to patreon.com/616entertainment. I'm a one-man crew. I write these videos, I research these videos, I shoot these videos, I edit these videos. I do it all myself. And if you want to support a one-man crew, patreon.com/616entertainment is the place to do so. You don't have to, but if you decide to, won't piss me off. Either way though, I love ya, and I will see you next time. Jesus Christ. I sprayed so much fog in this room. Oh, it won't even turn on now. We need more fog. Never enough fog. Shh. So sit back, relax, fuck. So sit back, relax, fuck. Why can't I remember this? So much fucking fog in here I can't even see. This was one more chance to try and make things right. God damn it. So sit back, relax, and get ready for the fuck. Patch. I can't get this line, man. I can't get this fucking line. So sit back, relax, and get ready for another wild ride in the land of Haddonfield's favorite slasher. This is the Fuck. I'm so close. Why don't I just practice more, goddammit? I've wondered who years... Fuck. This was the end. No Fuck. There's way too much fucking fog in here, dude. A truly satisfying ending to a legendary horror story. Clearly not him. Fuck. Jamie Lee Curtis, director Steve Miner, the creative integrity died. Fuck. Let's get into the story that this film tells, and then we'll talk about how it was made. What do you think? This patch hits the fucking camera. This new timeline that right here. The new fuck. Because this second timeline, the one that retcon fuck. Too much fog. I was 11 years old and I went to the I was 11 years fuck. You ready, Patch? Take 3. Whew. Last lines, Patch. You ready? We need more fucking fog. Jeez, Lou.